You ever just stop and think about the journey that makes you, well, you? It's got to be one of the biggest questions we can ask ourselves, right? Well, today, we're going to explore a really fascinating roadmap for that exact journey. I mean, deep down, this is the question we all wrestle with at some point. Who am I? How did I get here? It's all about identity, about growth, and really, the story of how we develop from our very first breath to our last. All right, so let's get into it. The map we're going to be using today comes from a psychologist named Erik Erikson. He came up with this incredible theory of what he called psychosocial development. Basically, it's a series of 8 stages that he believes shape our personality and who we are, not just in childhood, but across our entire lives. So what's the big idea behind all this? It's something called the epigenetic principle. Now that sounds complicated, but the concept is actually beautiful. Think of a flower bud. Each petal has to unfold in a very specific order for the flower to bloom properly, right? Erikson said, our personalities are kind of like that. They develop in a predetermined order, and getting through one stage successfully sets you up for the next one. It all builds on itself. Okay, so here's a quick look at where we're headed. First, we'll get that big picture view of the whole roadmap. Then, we'll dive into the foundational years, childhood. After that, we'll hit the big one, the search for identity during the teen years. Then we'll look at the major questions of adulthood. And finally, we'll ask, why does this map, which is decades old, still matters so much today? All right, Section 1, a roadmap for life. Let's start with that big picture view of the whole journey. What makes Erikson's theory so powerful is this idea that we never, ever stop growing. Your personality isn't just set in childhood. It's constantly being shaped as we face new challenges throughout our life. And here it is, the entire map, laid out all at once. Just look at that. It covers your whole life, from when you're a baby all the way to your later years. See how each row is a different stage, and each one has a central conflict? Like that first one, trust versus mistrust. If you get through that conflict successfully, you gain a new strength, what Erikson called a virtue. In this case, it's hope. We're not going to go through every single detail right now, but just take a second to absorb it. This is the path we're about to walk. Okay, let's zoom in on our first major stop, the foundational years. These first few stages, man, they are the absolute bedrock of our personality. This is where the fundamental building blocks of who you are start getting put into place. So, our journey kicks off the second we're born. Stage 1 is trust versus mistrust, and this very first task is all about figuring out our relationship with the world and the people in it. Think about it from a baby's perspective. They can't ask it out loud, but this is the question running through their mind. Can I trust this world? Is it a safe, reliable place? When I cry, will someone come? The answer they get to that question, that forms the very core of how they see the world for years to come. So it really boils down to this. If a baby's caregivers are consistent and they're responsive, that baby develops a sense of trust. But if that care is spotty or just not there, a deep sense of mistrust can take root. And when this goes well, we gain our very first psychological superpower, the virtue of hope. All right, so once we've decided the world is a pretty trustworthy place, what's next? We want to start exploring it on our own terms. This brings us to stage 2, autonomy versus shame and doubt. We're talking about the toddler years here, a time that's all about that powerful drive for independence. Oh yeah, this is the classic I can do it phase. If you've ever been around a 2-year-old, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're learning to walk, to talk, to feed themselves. They're testing their limits. The big conflict here is all about developing a sense of personal control over their own little world. And here's the tightrope for parents. If they encourage this exploration in a safe way, the child develops autonomy, that feeling of independence. But if they're constantly hovering, being overly critical, that's when shame and self-doubt can creep in. The reward for getting this balance right is the virtue of will. That's our inner drive, our determination. Okay, let's hit the fast forward button. We're jumping ahead to what a lot of people think is the most intense, most defining crossroads on this entire map, the teenage years. This is when the search for identity takes center stage. This is stage 5, identity versus role confusion, and it's probably Erikson's most famous stage. It's all about the single biggest job of being a teenager, figuring out who you are and where you're supposed to fit in this world. Who am I and what can I be? I mean, come on, that question basically echoes through the mind of every single teenager. We've all been there, right?
It's this time of crazy exploration, a ton of uncertainty, and a whole lot of just trying things on to see what fits.
So, how in the world do you even begin to answer a question that big? Well, you start trying on different hats. You think about what you want to be when you grow up. You start questioning your parents' beliefs and forming your own. You go through different friend groups, different music tastes, different hairstyles. Each one is like a little experiment, another piece of the puzzle you're putting together to figure out who you really are. Now, finding a healthy balance here is absolutely crucial. If you go to one extreme, you can end up with what Erikson called fanaticism, where you're so locked into your identity that you can't accept anyone who's different. The other extreme is repudiation, where you just reject identity altogether. The sweet spot, the goal, is to develop fidelity. That's the ability to be true to yourself while also respecting that other people are true to themselves. But listen, the journey doesn't just end when you toss your graduation cap in the air. Erikson's whole point was that this development continues through our entire lives. So now we move into the big stages of adulthood, where we face a whole new set of massive questions. Yeah, the adult journey has its own major crossroads. And for a lot of us, this is the part of the map we're navigating right now. First up is intimacy versus isolation. After you spent your teen years figuring out who you are, the next big question is, can I share my life deeply with someone else without losing myself in the process? Then you hit midlife, and the conflict becomes generativity versus stagnation. This is all about the need to contribute something that will outlast you. It could be raising kids, mentoring someone at work, or just making your corner of the world a little better. It's about leaving a legacy. And finally, in our later years, we reach the last stage, integrity versus despair. This is when we look back at the whole journey and ask, was it a good life? Did it all mean something? Wow, each stage just poses a bigger and more profound question. So there you have it. We've gone from infancy all the way to old age. But let's be real, this theory was developed back in the 1950s. So the big question is, why is this old map still one of the most important guides we have in psychology today? Well, for one, Erikson's theory was totally revolutionary for its time. He was one of the first to say, hey, we don't just stop developing when we're 18. He saw it as a lifelong process. Plus, his approach is so holistic. It weaves together our inner psychological world with our social and cultural environment. And it's not just theory. It has real-world uses everywhere, from teaching in classrooms to helping people in therapy understand their own story. Of course, no map is perfect, right? And this one has its critiques. Some argue it's a bit biased towards a Western, maybe even male experience. The stages can seem a little too rigid. Life isn't always that neat and tidy. And some of the ideas are a bit vague and hard to prove with hard science. But even with those limitations, it's still an incredibly powerful lens for looking at a human life. And that really brings it all back to you, doesn't it? Because Erikson's map, it isn't just some dusty old theory. It's more like a mirror. It's a tool that invites us to look at our own lives, to make sense of our past, to figure out our present, and to look toward our future. So, as we wrap this up, take a look at this roadmap of a lifetime and just ask yourself, which crossroad are you navigating right now?